Hello, YouTube. In creating this program of the audio translations of the Holy Bible, I wish to notify the world that I am not taking credit for the audio version that I'm using here. That program is called the Living Translation of the Holy Bible, which is covered within the Old Testament and the New Testament. That was made by a company here in the United States, but I am not taking credit as me creating this program. I did not create this program. I am not taking credit for it. I'm using the program to help me spread the word to the world. Just like we have nuns and pastors and missionaries, they carry holy Bibles. Well, I can't carry a holy Bible in YouTube, so I use this audio program to help me spread the word to all the people and all the inhabitants of the world. This is the disclaimer that I have, that the audio version portion of the Holy Bible is not mine, and I cannot claim ownership to it or take any type of credit, but it does help me help you get a better understanding, because it's like a movie in your mind. Instead of reading the Holy Scriptures, you can hear it. Hello, YouTube viewers. Dave here. We are now going to continue with the audio version of the Holy Bible. We're going to continue on chapter 16 in Genesis chapter 16.
Chapter 16. But Sarai, Abram's wife, had no children. So Sarai took her servant, an Egyptian woman named Hagar, and gave her to Abram so she could bear his children.
"The Lord has kept me from having any children,"
Sarai said to Abram.
"Go and sleep with my servant. Perhaps I can have children through her."
And Abram agreed. So Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar the Egyptian servant, and gave her to Abram as a wife. This happened 10 years after Abram first arrived in the land of Canaan. So Abram slept with Hagar, and she became pregnant. When Hagar knew she was pregnant, she began to treat her mistress Sarai with contempt. Then Sarai said to Abram,
"It's all your fault. Now this servant of mine is pregnant, and she despises me, though I myself gave her the privilege of sleeping with you. The Lord will make you pay for doing this to me."
Abram replied,
"Since she is your servant, you may deal with her as you see fit."
So Sarai treated her harshly, and Hagar ran away. The angel of the Lord found Hagar beside a desert spring along the road to Shur. The angel said to her,
"Hagar, Sarai's servant, where have you come from, and where are you going?"
"I am running away from my mistress,"
she replied. Then the angel of the Lord said,
"Return to your mistress and submit to her authority."
The angel added,
"I will give you more descendants than you can count."
And the angel also said,
"You are now pregnant and will give birth to a son. You are to name him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard about your misery. This son of yours will be a wild one, free and untamed as a wild donkey. He will be against everyone, and everyone will be against him. Yes, he will live at odds with the rest of his brothers."
Thereafter Hagar referred to the Lord who had spoken to her as the God who sees me. For she said,
"I have seen the one who sees me."
Later that well was named Bir Lahairoi, and it can still be found between Kadesh and Bered. So Hagar gave Abram a son, and Abram named him Ishmael. Abram was 86 years old at that time. Chapter 17. When Abram was 99 years old, the Lord appeared to him and said, "I am God Almighty. Serve me faithfully and live a blameless life. I will make a covenant with you by which I will guarantee to make you into a mighty nation. At this, Abram fell face down in the dust. Then God said to him, This is my covenant with you. I will make you the father of not just one nation, but a multitude of nations. What's more, I am changing your name. It will no longer be Abram. Now you will be known as Abraham, for you will be the father of many nations. I will give you millions of descendants who will represent many nations. Kings will be among them. I will continue this everlasting covenant between us, generation after generation. It will continue between me and your offspring forever. I will always be your God, and the God of your descendants after you. Yes, I will give all this land of Canaan to you and to your offspring forever, and I will be their God. Your part of the agreement, God told Abraham, is to obey the terms of the covenant. You and all your descendants have this continual responsibility. This is the covenant that you and your descendants must keep. Each male among you must be circumcised. The flesh of his foreskin must be cut off. This will be a sign that you and they have accepted this covenant. Every male child must be circumcised on the 8th day after his birth. This applies not only to members of your family, but also to the servants born in your household and the foreign-born servants whom you have purchased. All must be circumcised. Your bodies will thus bear the mark of my everlasting covenant. Anyone who refuses to be circumcised will be cut off from the covenant family for violating the covenant. Then God added, Regarding Sarai, your wife, her name will no longer be Sarai. From now on you will call her Sarah, and I will bless her and give you a son from her. Yes, I will bless her richly, and she will become the mother of many nations. Kings will be among her descendants. Then Abraham bowed down to the ground, but he laughed to himself in disbelief.
How can I become a father at the age of 100?
He wondered.
Besides, Sarah is 90. How could she have a baby?
And Abraham said to God,
Yes, may Ishmael enjoy your special blessing.
But God replied, Sarah, your wife, will bear you a son. You will name him Isaac, and I will confirm my everlasting covenant with him and his descendants. As for Ishmael, I will bless him also, just as you have asked. I will cause him to multiply and become a great nation. 12 princes will be among his descendants. But my covenant is with Isaac, who will be born to you and Sarah about this time next year. That ended the conversation, and God left Abraham. On that very day Abraham took his son Ishmael and every other male in his household and circumcised them, cutting off their foreskins exactly as God had told him. Abraham was 99 years old at that time, and Ishmael his son was 13. Both were circumcised the same day, along with all the other men and boys of the household, whether they were born there or bought as servants. Chapter 18. The Lord appeared again to Abraham while he was camped near the oak grove belonging to Mamre. One day, about noon, as Abraham was sitting at the entrance to his tent, he suddenly noticed 3 men standing nearby. He got up and ran to meet them, welcoming them by bowing low to the ground.
My lord,
he said,
if it pleases you, stop here for a while. Rest in the shade of this tree, while my servants get some water to wash your feet. Let me prepare some food to refresh you. Please stay a while before continuing on your journey.
All right,
they said.
do as you have said.
So Abraham ran back to the tent and said to Sarah,
Quick, get 3 measures of your best flour and bake some bread.
Then Abraham ran out to the herd and chose a fat calf and told his servant to hurry and butcher it. When the food was ready, he took some cheese curds and milk and the roasted meat, and he served it to the men. As they ate, Abraham waited on them there beneath the trees.
Where is Sarah, your wife?
They asked him.
In the tent.
Abraham replied. Then one of them said,
About this time next year I will return, and your wife Sarah will have a son.
Now Sarah was listening to this conversation from the tent nearby, and since Abraham and Sarah were both very old, and Sarah was long past the age of having children, she laughed silently to herself.
How could a worn-out woman like me have a baby?
She thought.
And when my master, my husband, is also so old.
Then the Lord said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh? Why did she say, Can an old woman like me have a baby? Is anything too hard for the Lord? About a year from now, just as I told you, I will return, and Sarah will have a son. Sarah was afraid, so she denied that she had laughed. But he said, That is not true. You did laugh. Then the men got up from their meal and started on toward Sodom. Abraham went with them part of the way. Should I hide my plan from Abraham? The Lord asked. For Abraham will become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth will be blessed through him. I have singled him out so that he will direct his sons and their families to keep the way of the Lord and do what is right and just. Then I will do for him all that I have promised. So the Lord told Abraham, I have heard that the people of Sodom and Gomorrah are extremely evil, and that everything they do is wicked. I am going down to see whether or not these reports are true, then I will know. The two other men went on toward Sodom, but the Lord remained with Abraham for a while. Abraham approached him and said,
Will you destroy both innocent and guilty alike? Suppose you find 50 innocent people there within the city. Will you still destroy it and not spare it for their sakes? Surely you wouldn't do such a thing, destroying the innocent with the guilty. Why, you would be treating the innocent and the guilty exactly the same. Surely you wouldn't do that. Should not the judge of all the earth do what is right?
And the Lord replied, If I find 50 innocent people in Sodom, I will spare the entire city for their sake. Then Abraham spoke again.
Since I have begun, let me go on and speak further to my Lord, even though I am but dust and ashes. Suppose there are only 45. Will you destroy the city for lack of 5?
And the Lord said, I will not destroy it if I find 45. Then Abraham pressed his request further.
Suppose there are only 40.
And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it if there are 40.
Please don't be angry, my Lord.
Abraham pleaded.
Let me speak. Suppose only 30 are found.
And the Lord replied, I will not destroy it if there are 30. Then Abraham said,
Since I have dared to speak to the Lord, let me continue. Suppose there are only 20.
And the Lord said, Then I will not destroy it for the sake of the 20. Finally Abraham said,
Lord, please do not get angry. I will speak but once more. Suppose only 10 are found there.
And the Lord said, Then for the sake of the 10 I will not destroy it. The Lord went on his way when he had finished his conversation with Abraham, and Abraham returned to his tent. Chapter 19. That evening the two angels came to the entrance of the city of Sodom, and Lot was sitting there as they arrived. When he saw them, he stood up to meet them. Then he welcomed them and bowed low to the ground.
My lords,
He said,
come to my home to wash your feet and be my guests for the night. You may then get up in the morning as early as you like and be on your way again.
Oh, no.
They said.
We'll just spend the night out here in the city square.
But Lot insisted. So at last they went home with him. He set a great feast before them, complete with fresh bread made without yeast. After the meal, as they were preparing to retire for the night, all the men of Sodom, young and old, came from all over the city and surrounded the house. They shouted to Lot,
Where are the men who came to spend the night with you? Bring them out so we can have sex with them.
Lot stepped outside to talk to them, shutting the door behind him.
Please, my brothers,
He begged.
don't do such a wicked thing. Look, I have 2 virgin daughters. Do with them as you wish. But leave these men alone, for they are under my protection.
Stand back! Who do you think you are? We let you settle among us, and now you are trying to tell us what to do? We'll treat you far worse than those other men.
And they lunged at Lot and began breaking down the door. But the 2 angels reached out and pulled Lot in and bolted the door. Then they blinded the men of Sodom, so they couldn't find the doorway.
Do you have any other relatives here in the city?
the angels asked.
Get them out of this place, sons-in-law, sons, daughters, or anyone else, for we will destroy the city completely. The stench of the place has reached the Lord, and he has sent us to destroy it.
So Lot rushed out to tell his daughters' fiancés.
Quick! Get out of this city! The Lord is going to destroy it!
But the young men thought he was only joking. At dawn the next morning, the angels became insistent.
Hurry!
They said to Lot,
Take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here. Get out of here right now, or you will be caught in the destruction of the city.
When Lot still hesitated, the angels seized his hand and the hands of his wife and 2 daughters and rushed them to safety outside the city, for the Lord was merciful.
Run for your lives,
the angels warned.
Do not stop anywhere in the valley, and don't look back. Escape to the mountains, or you will die.
Oh no, my lords, please,
Lot begged.
You have been so kind to me and saved my life, and you have granted me such mercy. But I cannot go to the mountains. Disaster would catch up to me there, and I would soon die. See, there is a small village nearby. Please let me go there instead. Don't you see how small it is? Then my life will be saved.
All right,
the angel said.
I will grant your request. I will not destroy that little village. But hurry, for I can do nothing until you are there.
From that time on, that village was known as Zoar. The sun was rising as Lot reached the village. Then the Lord rained down fire and burning sulfur from the heavens on Sodom and Gomorrah. He utterly destroyed them, along with the other cities and villages of the plain, eliminating all life, people, plants, and animals alike. But Lot's wife looked back as she was following along behind him, and she became a pillar of salt. The next morning Abraham was up early and hurried out to the place where he had stood in the Lord's presence. He looked out across the plain to Sodom and Gomorrah, and saw columns of smoke and fumes as from a furnace rising from the cities there. But God had listened to Abraham's request and kept Lot safe, removing him from the disaster that engulfed the cities on the plain. Afterward Lot left Zoar because he was afraid of the people there, and he went to live in a cave in the mountains with his 2 daughters. One day the older daughter said to her sister,
There isn't a man anywhere in this entire area for us to marry, and our father will soon be too old to have children. Come, let's get him drunk with wine, and then we will sleep with him. That way we will preserve our family line through our father.
So that night they got him drunk, and the older daughter went in and slept with her father. He was unaware of her lying down or getting up again. The next morning the older daughter said to her younger sister,
I slept with our father last night. Let's get him drunk with wine again tonight, and you go in and sleep with him. That way our family line will be preserved.
So that night they got him drunk again, and the younger daughter went in and slept with him. As before, he was unaware of her lying down or getting up again. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. When the older daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Moab. He became the ancestor of the nation now known as the Moabites. When the younger daughter gave birth to a son, she named him Ben-Ami. He became the ancestor of the nation now known as the Ammonites. Chapter 20. Now Abraham moved south to the Negev and settled for a while between Kadesh and Shur at a place called Gerar. Abraham told people there that his wife Sarah was his sister. So King Abimelech sent for her and had her brought to him at his palace. But one night God came to Abimelech in a dream and told him, You are a dead man, for that woman you took is married. But Abimelech had not slept with her yet, so he said,
Lord, will you kill an innocent man? Abraham told me she is my sister, and she herself said, Yes, he is my brother. I acted in complete innocence.
Yes, I know you are innocent, God replied. That is why I kept you from sinning against me. I did not let you touch her. Now return her to her husband, and he will pray for you, for he is a prophet. Then you will live. But if you don't return her to him, you can be sure that you and your entire household will die. Abimelech got up early the next morning and hastily called a meeting of all his servants. When he told them what had happened, great fear swept through the crowd. Then Abimelech called for Abraham,
What is this you have done to us?
he demanded.
What have I done to you that deserves treatment like this, making me and my kingdom guilty of this great sin? This kind of thing should not be done. Why have you done this to us?
Well,
Abraham said,
I figured this to be a godless place. I thought, they will want my wife and will kill me to get her. Besides, she is my sister. We both have the same father, though different mothers, and I married her. When God sent me to travel far from my father's home, I told her, wherever we go, have the kindness to say that you are my sister.
Then Abimelech took sheep and oxen and servants, both men and women, and gave them to Abraham, and he returned his wife Sarah to him.
Look over my kingdom, and choose a place where you would like to live.
Abimelech told him. Then he turned to Sarah.
Look,
he said,
I am giving your brother 1,000 pieces of silver to compensate for any embarrassment I may have caused you. This will settle any claim against me in this matter.
Then Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech, his wife, and the other women of the household, so they could have children. For the Lord had stricken all the women with infertility, as a warning to Abimelech for having taken Abraham's wife. Chapter 21. Then the Lord did exactly what he had promised. Sarah became pregnant, and she gave a son to Abraham in his old age. It all happened at the time God had said it would, and Abraham named his son Isaac. 8 days after Isaac was born, Abraham circumcised him as God had commanded. Abraham was 100 years old at the time. And Sarah declared, God has brought me laughter. All who hear about this will laugh with me. For who would have dreamed that I would ever have a baby? Yet I have given Abraham a son in his old age. As time went by and Isaac grew and was weaned, Abraham gave a big party to celebrate the happy occasion. But Sarah saw Ishmael, the son of Abraham, and her Egyptian servant Hagar making fun of Isaac. So she turned to Abraham and demanded,
Get rid of that servant and her son. He's not going to share the family inheritance with my son Isaac. I won't have it.
This upset Abraham very much, because Ishmael was his son. But God told Abraham, Do not be upset over the boy and your servant wife. Do just as Sarah says, for Isaac is the son through whom your descendants will be counted. But I will make a nation of the descendants of Hagar's son, because he also is your son. So Abraham got up early the next morning, prepared food for the journey, and strapped a container of water to Hagar's shoulders. He sent her away with their son, and she walked out into the wilderness of Beersheba, wandering aimlessly. When the water was gone, she left the boy in the shade of a bush. Then she went and sat down by herself about 100 yards away.
I don't want to watch the boy die,
she said, as she burst into tears. Then God heard the boy's cries, and the angel of God called to Hagar from the sky,
Hagar, what's wrong? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy's cries from the place where you laid him. Go to him and comfort him, for I will make a great nation from his descendants.
Then God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well. She immediately filled her water container and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy as he grew up in the wilderness of Paran. He became an expert archer, and his mother arranged a marriage for him with a young woman from Egypt. About this time Abimelech came with Phicol, his army commander, to visit Abraham.
It is clear that God helps you in everything you do,
Abimelech said.
Swear to me in God's name that you won't deceive me, my children, or my grandchildren. I have been loyal to you, so now swear that you will be loyal to me and to this country in which you are living.
Abraham replied,
All right, I swear to it.
Then Abraham complained to Abimelech about a well that Abimelech's servants had taken violently from Abraham's servants.
This is the first I've heard of it,
Abimelech said,
and I have no idea who is responsible. Why didn't you say something about this before?
Then Abraham gave sheep and oxen to Abimelech, and they made a treaty. But when Abraham took 7 additional ewe lambs and set them off by themselves, Abimelech asked,
Why are you doing that?
Abraham replied,
They are my gift to you as a public confirmation that I dug this well.
So ever since, that place has been known as Beersheba, Well of the Oath, because that was where they had sworn an oath. After making their covenant, Abimelech left with Phicol, the commander of his army, and they returned home to the land of the Philistines. Then Abraham planted a tamarisk tree at Beersheba, and he worshipped the Lord, the eternal God, at that place. And Abraham lived in Philistine country for a long time. Chapter 22. Later on, God tested Abraham's faith and obedience. Abraham, God called.
Yes,
He replied,
here I am.
Take your son, your only son, yes, Isaac, whom you love so much, and go to the land of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on one of the mountains, which I will point out to you. The next morning Abraham got up early. He saddled his donkey and took 2 of his servants with him, along with his son Isaac. Then he chopped wood to build a fire for a burnt offering, and set out for the place where God had told him to go. On the 3rd day of the journey Abraham saw the place in the distance.
Stay here with the donkey,
Abraham told the young men.
The boy and I will travel a little farther. We will worship there, and then we will come right back.
Abraham placed the wood for the burnt offering on Isaac's shoulders, while he himself carried the knife and the fire. As the 2 of them went on together, Isaac said,
Father,
Yes, my son.
Abraham replied,
we have the wood and the fire,
said the boy.
but where is the lamb for the sacrifice?
God will provide a lamb, my son.
Abraham answered, and they both went on together. When they arrived at the place where God had told Abraham to go, he built an altar and placed the wood on it. Then he tied Isaac up and laid him on the altar over the wood. And Abraham took the knife and lifted it up to kill his son as a sacrifice to the Lord. At that moment, the angel of the Lord shouted to him from heaven,
Abraham, Abraham,
Yes, he answered, I'm listening.
lay down the knife.
The angel said,
Do not hurt the boy in any way, for now I know that you truly fear God. You have not withheld even your beloved son from me.
Then Abraham looked up and saw a ram caught by its horns in a bush. So he took the ram and sacrificed it as a burnt offering on the altar in place of his son. Abraham named the place, The Lord Will Provide. This name has now become a proverb. On the mountain of the Lord it will be provided. Then the angel of the Lord called again to Abraham from heaven,
This is what the Lord says, Because you have obeyed me and have not withheld even your beloved son, I swear by my own self that I will bless you richly. I will multiply your descendants into countless millions, like the stars of the sky and the sand on the seashore. They will conquer their enemies, and through your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed, all because you have obeyed me.
Then they returned to Abraham's young men and traveled home again to Beersheba, where Abraham lived for quite some time. Soon after this, Abraham heard that Milcah, his brother Nahor's wife, had borne Nahor 8 sons. The oldest was named Uz, the next oldest was Buz, followed by Kemuel, the father of Aram, Kesed, Hazo, Pildash, Jidlaph, and Bethuel. Bethuel became the father of Rebekah. In addition to his 8 sons from Milcah, Nahor had 4 other children from his concubine Reumah. Their names were Teba, Gaham, Tehash, and Meachah. Chapter 23. When Sarah was 127 years old, she died at Kiriath Arba, now called Hebron, in the land of Canaan. There Abraham mourned and wept for her. Then leaving her body, he went to the Hittite elders and said,
Here I am, a stranger in a foreign land, with no place to bury my wife. Please, let me have a piece of land for a burial plot.
The Hittites replied to Abraham,
Certainly, for you are an honored prince among us. It will be a privilege to have you choose the finest of our tombs, so you can bury her there.
Then Abraham bowed low before them and said,
Since this is how you feel, be so kind as to ask Ephron, son of Zohar, to let me have the cave of Machpelah down at the end of this field. I want to pay the full price, of course, whatever is publicly agreed upon, so I may have a permanent burial place for my family.
Ephron was sitting there among the others, and he answered Abraham as the others listened, speaking publicly before all the elders of the town.
"No, sir,"
he said to Abraham.
"Please listen to me. I will give you the cave and the field. Here in the presence of my people I give it to you. Go and bury your dead."
Abraham bowed again to the people of the land, and he replied to Ephron as everyone listened.
"No, listen to me,"
he insisted.
"I will buy it from you. Let me pay the full price for the field, so I can bury my dead there."
"Well,"
Ephron answered,
"the land is worth 400 pieces of silver. But what is that between friends? Go ahead and bury your dead."
So Abraham paid Ephron the amount he had suggested, 400 pieces of silver, as was publicly agreed. He bought the plot of land belonging to Ephron at Machpelah, near Mamre. This included the field, the cave that was in it, and all the trees nearby. They became Abraham's permanent possession by the agreement made in the presence of the Hittite elders at the city gate. So Abraham buried Sarah there in Canaan, in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, which is at Hebron. The field and the cave were sold to Abraham by the Hittites as a permanent burial place. Chapter 24. Abraham was now a very old man, and the Lord had blessed him in every way. One day Abraham said to the man in charge of his household, who was his oldest servant,
"Swear by the Lord, the God of heaven and earth, that you will not let my son marry one of these local Canaanite women. Go instead to my homeland, to my relatives, and find a wife there for my son Isaac."
The servant asked,
"But suppose I can't find a young woman who will travel so far from home. May I then take Isaac there to live among your relatives?"
"No,"
Abraham warned.
"Be careful never to take my son there. For the Lord, the God of heaven, who took me from my father's house and my native land, solemnly promised to give this land to my offspring. He will send his angel ahead of you, and he will see to it that you find a young woman there to be my son's wife. If she's unwilling to come back with you, then you are free from this oath, but under no circumstances are you to take my son there."
So the servant took a solemn oath that he would follow Abraham's instructions. He loaded 10 of Abraham's camels with gifts and set out, taking with him the best of everything his master owned. He traveled to Aram Naharaim and went to the village where Abraham's brother Nahor had settled. There the servant made the camels kneel down beside a well just outside the village. It was evening, and the women were coming out to draw water.
"O Lord, God of my master,"
he prayed,
"give me success and show kindness to my master Abraham. Help me to accomplish the purpose of my journey. See, here I am, standing beside this spring, and the young women of the village are coming out to draw water. This is my request. I will ask one of them for a drink. If she says, 'Yes, certainly, and I will water your camels too,' let her be the one you have appointed as Isaac's wife. By this I will know that you have shown kindness to my master."
As he was still praying, a young woman named Rebekah arrived with a water jug on her shoulder. Her father was Bethuel, who was the son of Abraham's brother Nahor, and his wife Milcah. Now Rebekah was very beautiful, and she was a virgin. No man had ever slept with her. She went down to the spring, filled her jug, and came up again. Running over to her, the servant asked,
"Please give me a drink."
"Certainly, sir,"
she said, and she quickly lowered the jug for him to drink. When he had finished, she said,
"I'll draw water for your camels, too, until they have had enough."
So she quickly emptied the jug into the watering trough and ran down to the well again. She kept carrying water to the camels until they had finished drinking. The servant watched her in silence, wondering whether or not she was the one the Lord intended him to meet. Then at last, when the camels had finished drinking, he gave her a gold ring for her nose, and 2 large gold bracelets for her wrists.
"Whose daughter are you?"
he asked.
"Would your father have any room to put us up for the night?"
My father is Bethuel,
she replied.
My grandparents are Nahor and Milcah. Yes, we have plenty of straw and food for the camels, and we have a room for guests."
The man fell down to the ground and worshipped the Lord.
Praise be to the Lord, the God of my master Abraham,
he said.
The Lord has been so kind and faithful to Abraham, for he has led me straight to my master's relatives.
The young woman ran home to tell her family about all that had happened. Now Rebekah had a brother named Laban. When he saw the nose ring and the bracelets on his sister's wrists, and when he heard her story, he rushed out to the spring where the man was still standing beside his camels. Laban said to him,
"Come and stay with us, you who are blessed by the Lord. Why do you stand here outside the village when we have a room all ready for you and a place prepared for the camels?"
So the man went home with Laban, and Laban unloaded the camels, gave him straw to bed them down, fed them, and provided water for the camel drivers to wash their feet. Then supper was served. But Abraham's servant said,
"I don't want to eat until I have told you why I have come."
"All right,"
Laban said.
"Tell us your mission."
"I am Abraham's servant,"
he explained,
"and the Lord has blessed my master richly. He has become a great man. The Lord has given him flocks of sheep and herds of cattle, a fortune in silver and gold, and many servants and camels and donkeys. When Sarah, my master's wife, was very old, she gave birth to my master's son. And my master has given him everything he owns. And my master made me swear that I would not let Isaac marry one of the local Canaanite women. Instead, I was to come to his relatives here in this far-off land, to his father's home. I was told to bring back a young woman from here to marry his son. But suppose I can't find a young woman willing to come back with me, I asked him. You will, he told me. For the Lord, in whose presence I have walked, will send his angel with you and will make your mission successful. Yes, you must get a wife for my son from among my relatives, from my father's family. But if you go to my relatives and they refuse to let her come, you will be free from your oath. So this afternoon, when I came to the spring, I prayed this prayer. O Lord, the God of my master Abraham, if you are planning to make my mission a success, please guide me in a special way. Here I am, standing beside this spring. I will say to some young woman who comes to draw water, please give me a drink of water. And she will reply, certainly, and I'll water your camels too. Lord, let her be the one you have selected to be the wife of my master's son. Before I had finished praying these words, I saw Rebekah coming along with her water jug on her shoulder. She went down to the spring and drew water and filled the jug. So I said to her, please give me a drink. She quickly lowered the jug from her shoulder so I could drink. And she said, certainly, sir, and I will water your camels too. And she did. When I asked her whose daughter she was, she told me, my father is Bethuel, the son of Nahor, and his wife Milcah. So I gave her the ring and the bracelets. Then I bowed my head and worshipped the Lord. I praised the Lord, the God of my master Abraham, because he had led me along the right path to find a wife from the family of my master's relatives. So tell me, will you or won't you show true kindness to my master? When you tell me, then I'll know what my next step should be, whether to move this way or that.
Then Laban and Bethuel replied,
The Lord has obviously brought you here. So what can we say? Here is Rebekah.
Take her and go. Yes, let her be the wife of your master's son, as the Lord has directed.
At this reply, Abraham's servant bowed to the ground and worshipped the Lord. Then he brought out silver and gold jewelry and lovely clothing for Rebekah. He also gave valuable presents to her mother and brother. Then they had supper, and the servant and the men with him stayed there overnight. But early the next morning he said,
Send me back to my master.
But we want Rebekah to stay at least 10 days.
Her brother and mother said,
Then she can go.
But he said,
Don't hinder my return. The Lord has made my mission successful, and I want to report back to my master.
Well,
they said.
We'll call Rebekah and ask her what she thinks.
So they called Rebekah.
Are you willing to go with this man?
They asked her, and she replied,
Yes, I will go.
So they said goodbye to Rebekah and sent her away with Abraham's servant and his men. The woman who had been Rebekah's childhood nurse went along with her. They blessed her with this blessing as she parted.
Our sister, may you become the mother of many millions. May your descendants overcome all their enemies.
Then Rebekah and her servants mounted the camels and left with Abraham's servant. Meanwhile, Isaac, whose home was in the Negev, had returned from Bir Lahai Roi. One evening, as he was taking a walk out in the fields, meditating, he looked up and saw the camels coming. When Rebekah looked up and saw Isaac, she quickly dismounted.
Who is that man walking through the fields to meet us?
She asked the servant, and he replied,
It is my master.
So Rebekah covered her face with her veil. Then the servant told Isaac the whole story. And Isaac brought Rebekah into his mother's tent, and she became his wife. He loved her very much, and she was a special comfort to him after the death of his mother. Chapter 25. Now Abraham married again. Keturah was his new wife, and she bore him Zimran, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan's two sons were Sheba and Dedan. Dedan's descendants were the Asherites, Letushites, and Leumites. Midian's sons were Ephah, Epher, Hanoch, Abida, and Eldaah. These were all descendants of Abraham through Keturah. Abraham left everything he owned to his son Isaac, but before he died he gave gifts to the sons of his concubines and sent them off to the east away from Isaac. Abraham lived for 175 years, and he died at a ripe old age, joining his ancestors in death. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite. This was the field Abraham had purchased from the Hittites, where he had buried his wife Sarah. After Abraham's death, God poured out rich blessings on Isaac, who settled near Bir Lahai Roi in the Negev. This is the history of the descendants of Ishmael, the son of Abraham, through Hagar, Sarah's Egyptian servant. Here is a list by their names and clans of Ishmael's descendants. The oldest was Nebaioth, followed by Kedar, Abdil, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedemah. These 12 sons of Ishmael became the founders of 12 tribes that bore their names, listed according to the places they settled and camped. Ishmael finally died at the age of 137 and joined his ancestors in death. Ishmael's descendants were scattered across the country from Havilah to Shur, which is east of Egypt in the direction of Ashur. The clans descended from Ishmael camped close to one another. This is the history of the family of Isaac, the son of Abraham. When Isaac was 40 years old, he married Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel the Aramean from Padan Aram, and the sister of Laban. Isaac pleaded with the Lord to give Rebekah a child because she was childless. So the Lord answered Isaac's prayer, and his wife became pregnant with twins. But the two children struggled with each other in her womb. So she went to ask the Lord about it.
Why is this happening to me?
She asked. And the Lord told her, The sons in your womb will become 2 rival nations. One nation will be stronger than the other. The descendants of your older son will serve the descendants of your younger son. And when the time came, the twins were born. The first was very red at birth. He was covered with so much hair that one would think he was wearing a piece of clothing. So they called him Esau. Then the other twin was born with his hand grasping Esau's heel. So they called him Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when the twins were born. As the boys grew up, Esau became a skillful hunter, a man of the open fields, while Jacob was the kind of person who liked to stay at home. Isaac loved Esau in particular because of the wild game he brought home, but Rebekah favored Jacob. One day when Jacob was cooking some stew, Esau arrived home exhausted and hungry from a hunt. Esau said to Jacob,
I'm starved. Give me some of that red stew you've made.
This was how Esau got his other name, Edom, red. Jacob replied,
All right, but trade me your birthright for it.
Look, I'm dying of starvation,
said Esau.
What good is my birthright to me now?
So Jacob insisted.
Well then, swear to me right now that it is mine.
So Esau swore an oath, thereby selling all his rights as the firstborn to his younger brother. Then Jacob gave Esau some bread and lentil stew. Esau ate and drank and went on about his business, indifferent to the fact that he had given up his birthright. Chapter 26. Now a severe famine struck the land, as had happened before in Abraham's time. So Isaac moved to Gerar, where Abimelech king of the Philistines lived. The Lord appeared to him there, and said, Do not go to Egypt. Do as I say, and stay here in this land. If you do, I will be with you and bless you. I will give all this land to you and your descendants, just as I solemnly promised Abraham your father. I will cause your descendants to become as numerous as the stars, and I will give them all these lands. And through your descendants all the nations of the earth will be blessed. I will do this because Abraham listened to me and obeyed all my requirements, commands, regulations, and laws. So Isaac stayed in Gerar, and when the men there asked him about Rebekah, he said,
She is my sister.
He was afraid to admit that she was his wife. He thought they would kill him to get her because she was very beautiful. But some time later Abimelech, king of the Philistines, looked out a window and saw Isaac fondling Rebekah. Abimelech called for Isaac and exclaimed,
She is obviously your wife. Why did you say she was your sister?
Because I was afraid someone would kill me to get her from me.
Isaac replied.
How could you treat us this way?
Abimelech exclaimed.
Someone might have taken your wife and slept with her, and you would have made us guilty of great sin.
Then Abimelech made a public proclamation.
Anyone who harms this man or his wife will die.
That year Isaac's crops were tremendous. He harvested 100 times more grain than he planted, for the Lord blessed him. He became a rich man, and his wealth only continued to grow. He acquired large flocks of sheep and goats, great herds of cattle, and many servants. Soon the Philistines became jealous of him, and they filled up all of Isaac's wells with earth. These were the wells that had been dug by the servants of his father Abraham. And Abimelech asked Isaac to leave the country.
Go somewhere else,
he said,
for you have become too rich and powerful for us.
So Isaac moved to the Gerar valley and lived there instead. He reopened the wells his father had dug, which the Philistines had filled in after Abraham's death. Isaac renamed them, using the names Abraham had given them. His shepherds also dug in the Gerar valley and found a gushing spring. But then the local shepherds came and claimed the spring.
This is our water,
they said, and they argued over it with Isaac's herdsmen. So Isaac named the well Argument, because they had argued about it with him. Isaac's men then dug another well, but again there was a fight over it. So Isaac named it Opposition. Abandoning that one, he dug another well, and the local people finally left him alone. So Isaac called it Room Enough, for he said,
At last the Lord has made room for us, and we will be able to thrive.
From there Isaac moved to Beersheba, where the Lord appeared to him on the night of his arrival. I am the God of your father Abraham, he said. Do not be afraid, for I am with you and will bless you. I will give you many descendants, and they will become a great nation. I will do this because of my promise to Abraham my servant. Then Isaac built an altar there and worshipped the Lord. He set up his camp at that place, and his servants dug a well. One day Isaac had visitors from Gerar. King Abimelech arrived with his adviser Ahuzah, and also Phicol, his army commander.
Why have you come?
Isaac asked them.
This is obviously no friendly visit, since you sent me from your land in a most unfriendly way.
They replied,
We can plainly see that the Lord is with you, so we decided we should have a treaty, a covenant between us. Swear that you will not harm us, just as we did not harm you. We've always treated you well, and we sent you away from us in peace. And now look how the Lord has blessed you.
So Isaac prepared a great feast for them, and they ate and drank in preparation for the treaty ceremony. Early the next morning, they each took a solemn oath of non-aggression. Then Isaac sent them home again in peace. That very day Isaac's servants came and told him about a well they had dug.
We've found water,
they said. So Isaac named the well Oath. And from that time to this, the town that grew up there has been called Beersheba, Well of the Oath. At the age of 40, Esau married a young woman named Judith, the daughter of Beeri the Hittite. He also married Basemath, the daughter of Elon the Hittite. But Esau's wives made life miserable for Isaac and Rebekah. Chapter 27. When Isaac was old and almost blind, he called for Esau his older son, and said,
My son.
Yes, father?
Esau replied,
I am an old man now, and I expect every day to be my last. Take your bow and quiver full of arrows out into the open country, and hunt some wild game for me. Prepare it just the way I like it, so it's savory and good, and bring it here for me to eat. Then I will pronounce the blessing that belongs to you, my firstborn son, before I die.
But Rebekah overheard the conversation. So when Esau left to hunt for the wild game, she said to her son Jacob,
I overheard your father asking Esau to prepare him a delicious meal of wild game. He wants to bless Esau in the Lord's presence before he dies. Now, my son, do exactly as I tell you. Go out to the flocks and bring me 2 fine young goats. I'll prepare your father's favorite dish from them. Take the food to your father. Then he can eat it and bless you instead of Esau before he dies.
But, mother,
Jacob replied,
he won't be fooled that easily. Think how hairy Esau is and how smooth my skin is. What if my father touches me? He'll see that I'm trying to trick him, and then he'll curse me instead of blessing me.
Let the curse fall on me, dear son,
said Rebekah.
Just do what I tell you. Go out and get the goats.
So Jacob followed his mother's instructions, bringing her the 2 goats. She took them and cooked a delicious meat dish, just the way Isaac liked it. Then she took Esau's best clothes, which were there in the house, and dressed Jacob with them. She made him a pair of gloves from the hairy skin of the young goats, and she fastened a strip of the goat's skin around his neck. Then she gave him the meat dish, with its rich aroma, and some freshly baked bread. Jacob carried the platter of food to his father and said,
My father?
Yes, my son,
he answered.
Who is it, Esau or Jacob?
Jacob replied,
It's Esau, your older son. I've done as you told me. Here is the wild game, cooked the way you like it. Sit up and eat it so you can give me your blessing.
Isaac asked,
How were you able to find it so quickly, my son?
Because the Lord your God put it in my path,
Jacob replied. Then Isaac said to Jacob,
Come over here. I want to touch you to make sure you really are Esau.
So Jacob went over to his father, and Isaac touched him.
The voice is Jacob's, but the hands are Esau's,
Isaac said to himself, but he did not recognize Jacob because Jacob's hands felt hairy, just like Esau's. So Isaac pronounced his blessing on Jacob.
Are you really my son, Esau?
He asked.
Yes, of course,
Jacob replied. Then Isaac said,
Now, my son, bring me the meat. I will eat it, and then I will give you my blessing.
So Jacob took the food over to his father, and Isaac ate it. He also drank the wine that Jacob served him. Then Isaac said,
Come here and kiss me, my son.
So Jacob went over and kissed him, and when Isaac caught the smell of his clothes, he was finally convinced, and he blessed his son. He said,
The smell of my son is the good smell of the open fields that the Lord has blessed. May God always give you plenty of dew for healthy crops, and good harvests of grain and wine. May many nations become your servants. May you be the master of your brothers. May all your mother's sons bow low before you. All who curse you are cursed, and all who bless you are blessed.
As soon as Isaac had blessed Jacob, and almost before Jacob had left his father, Esau returned from his hunting trip. Esau prepared his father's favorite meat dish and brought it to him. Then he said,
I'm back, father, and I have the wild game. Sit up and eat it, so you can give me your blessing.
But Isaac asked him,
Who are you?
Why, it's me, of course,
he replied.
It's Esau, your older son.
Isaac began to tremble uncontrollably and said,
Then who was it that just served me wild game? I have already eaten it. And I blessed him with an irrevocable blessing before you came.
When Esau understood, he let out a loud and bitter cry.
"Oh, my father, bless me too,"
he begged. But Isaac said,
"Your brother was here, and he tricked me. He has carried away your blessing."
Esau said bitterly,
"No wonder his name is Jacob, for he has deceived me twice, first taking my birthright, and now stealing my blessing. Oh, haven't you saved even one blessing for me?"
Isaac said to Esau,
"I have made Jacob your master, and have declared that all his brothers will be his servants. I have guaranteed him an abundance of grain and wine. What is there left to give?"
Esau pleaded,
"Not one blessing left for me. Oh, my father, bless me too."
Then Esau broke down and wept. His father Isaac said to him,
"You will live off the land and what it yields, and you will live by your sword. You will serve your brother for a time, but then you will shake loose from him and be free."
Esau hated Jacob because he had stolen his blessing, and he said to himself,
"My father will soon be dead and gone. Then I will kill Jacob."
But someone got wind of what Esau was planning and reported it to Rebekah. She sent for Jacob and told him,
"Esau is threatening to kill you. This is what you should do. Flee to your uncle Laban in Haran. Stay there with him until your brother's fury is spent. When he forgets what you have done, I will send for you. Why should I lose both of you in one day?"
Then Rebekah said to Isaac,
"I'm sick and tired of these local Hittite women. I'd rather die than see Jacob marry one of them."